we're going to go through some basics first, and then proceed after that. Now, obviously, if you look at my little agenda here, some of the basics have to do with hardware and dealing with your actual system. When in version 8, let me bring up my 8. Bring up my 8. 1 second, please. I'd log buff. First thing, when you're dealing with version 8, when you get the login screen, any of you who have ever had the license problem where it says Retail Pro not licensed, or your authorization dates need to be applied, that's an indication that your license server needs to be checked to make sure that your license is current. And one of your Retail Pro computers runs that license server, and that's the one. I'm going to roll this back just so I can show you what it looks like. Back to June, whatever, log in. Oops, password would be nice. Okay, so every day when you log in, the Retail Pro checks the license to make sure that it's current. Okay, and one of your computers every 7 to 10 days, okay, does this when you log into Retail Pro. Okay, and so when you see this, okay, the only answer that's appropriate here is yes. New authorization dates have been applied to this workstation, and you want to apply them to all workstations in your chain. Now, at the main, you will have one workstation where you'll see this message, and if you see anything that says date invalid, that means that you need to go to wherever your license server is and log into Retail Pro, get this message, and say yes. Okay, so that's troubleshooting 101. In Retail Pro, I'm going to change this date back to my current date so that we can proceed. November 12th, and okay, and bring myself up to current. Okay, so that is one thing that a lot of people run into. We get a lot of tech calls, especially on the weekend. My date is invalid. If your date is invalid, you need to figure out which computer runs your license server. Most of the time when we set up a computer with version 8, we will put the main POS workstation as the license server. So that's the one you log into every day. And so every 7 to 10 days, you'll get that authorization dates. You say yes, everything keeps going. Everything is current. You have no worries. Okay, so that's kind of thing one. Now, another thing that version 8 will often do is you'll get just slipped mine right off the top. You will get an error that is kind of a memory error, and it will. There are two ways to fix it. One is to log out of Retail Pro and log back in. The other way to fix it is to actually reboot your computer. Okay, so a lot of times when your Retail Pro is acting funny and you're having trouble with accessing it, or it's freezing or whatever, rebooting your computer is one of the things that you will do, especially when with the XP versions of Windows, they had problems with memory. Some of you with Windows XP and version 8, if you're having the memory error, then rebooting that computer, okay, may resolve that. When you reboot, it's a good idea to exit out of Retail Pro before you reboot, if possible. Another thing that is important to know with version 8 is if you have more than one workstation, okay, there is one computer. It's either a server in the back or it's your WS1. one of the two. That is the where the Retail Pro files reside. And so the Retail Pro files, let me just show you really quick on mine. If I'm going to follow my shortcut. So if I right-click on my shortcut and I go to Properties, okay, that's going to open up the window that shows me where my Retail Pro is running from. Okay, and if I open this file location by clicking this right here, I get a window that opens up and tells me this is the disk that I'm on. This is my Retail 8 folder. This is where my Retail Pro data files are. Okay, if this is a workstation 1, this is my main workstation. This is a local disk on my computer. Okay, so this would be the equivalent of the main, and the workstations other than workstation 1 or your server, okay, will have what we call a mapped drive. Okay, so I'm going to back up here, and you can see down here under network location, I've got all kinds of map drives. You will have probably only one, and it'll say RPro main most likely on it. Okay, and if you're on any workstation other than your WS1 if you don't have a server, and the server if you do have one, okay, your Retail Pro will be installed on the server, your data files will reside on the server, and all of your workstations will have what we call a mapped drive under network location that you would be able to access the Retail Pro files like it was on your local drive. That's important because if you have problems with your network, which is like the #2 thing that we see that causes problems with Retail Pro, you may be able to run Retail Pro on your server or your workstation 1, but your other workstations can't see that computer in order to in order to connect to it and run Retail Pro. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later because there's some things in my agenda here having to do with losing your shortcut and things like that, which is something that that we see happen all the time. All right, so let me get back into my Retail Pro. All right, so if a reboot is necessary or recommended, okay, you can reboot any of the secondary workstations. It's recommended that you get out of Retail Pro before you do that, and if you can't exit here, okay, using the exit over here, or you can't exit using the X up here, then you could potentially use your task manager, right, in order to find the process, okay, and kill it. So the process here that is down here, that's what you'll see for version 8. That's your process. So if you're not familiar with the task manager, this is a basic Windows function. And so with Windows 7, let me go back here, you can start the task manager in either XP or Windows 7 by coming down to your toolbar down here and finding an empty space, which is more trick than it sometimes seems like. Right-click down here on the taskbar. Get my preview. All right, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the right-clicking. So if you have a problem with that, then Control-Alt-Delete, okay, gets you this screen, okay, which you may not be able to see. And there's a Start Task Manager on that screen. Okay, so that two different ways of getting into Task Manager. If you're not familiar with the Task Manager, use this carefully, but basically this would allow you to find a running program and end it. Okay, so here's my Retail Pro. Where's my Retail Pro? Down here. Here's my Retail Pro, and then I could highlight it and click in Task. The other thing you can do is find a process in the Processes tab, okay, which is in alphabetical order. You can sort it by clicking on this where it says image name, Okay, and you can find the name of the program, which is RPro-EXE, and you could end it from there. Okay, so highly recommended if you're going to reboot to get out of Retail Pro nicely. Exit is your best bet. One thing that happens if you don't exit cleanly, if you use this X up here or if you task manager it off, you may leave what we call workstation locks. Okay, and so some of you may have encountered that as well. It says WS1 is locked. When you try to log in again, this is workstation 1, and if I crash the program, and I try to log back in, it'll say WS1 is locked. Okay, there's a way that you can get rid of those files easily, and we are going to cover that. Let me see if I can just crash out of this and go into receipts here, and I'll X out of the program and see if that gives me a workstation lock. So I can show you how to get rid of it. All right, so yeah, it took the locks with it. Okay, so I might not be able to actually create that situation, but we'll talk about how to fix it anyway. So reboot, make sure you get out of Retail Pro in the cleanest method possible. Reboot your computer just like you would normally. Go to your Start menu, reboot if possible. If you're in the situation where nothing is responding, anything like that, and you have to just power it off, then there will probably be things that you'll have to do after that. You might have workstation locks. You might have broken an index in Retail Pro, et cetera, which is other things that we're going to talk about while we're here. Okay, so rebooting the computer. You can reboot a workstation as long as it's not your server or your workstation 1 where your files are, without interfering with the rest of the workstations. If whatever the problem is that you're trying to cure does not go away by rebooting the workstation, then you can try rebooting your server or your workstation 1, but you would want to make sure that all the workstations are exited out of Retail Pro before you do that, because your Retail Pro is being accessed over the network to your workstation 1 or your server. All right, on to the next. Where'd my little guy go? There we go. All right, so RProDB, okay, is a utility that does several things in Retail Pro. When we were talking just a second ago about workstation locks, workstation locks can be created if a workstation goes down while it's got a Retail Pro file open. Okay, it can create a workstation lock for that workstation, and you can go log into that workstation, and you'll see a little message, WS2 is locked, and this is actually WS2. For those of you, you're on version 8, and this workstation number is determined by a setting on your computer. Okay, and let's see if it's if I have it actually set up this way. I don't. For some of you on your shortcut, you will see WS 1 or 10 or 6 or whatever on here. It also can be part of your Windows setup, particularly in XP. So if your workstation numbers have gotten confused, it may be a Windows setting on your computer, that's an environment variable on your computer that's actually been changed. In 8, you can't have more than one computer running as workstation 1 at the same time. You could have a workstation 1 that you use part of the time as workstation 1, and then another workstation out on the floor or someplace else that uses workstation 1, but you can't have them both logged in at the same time. It's either one or the other of you. So if your workstation numbers have gotten messed up, that would probably be a tech call to help straighten that out. Okay, but as far as the subject at hand, RProDB, okay, that's a tool that you can get to from the Retail Pro menu, okay? Or you can actually run this outside the menu if it's necessary. So in the instance where you might have a workstation lock file and you can't log into Retail Pro on this workstation, okay, and this is the only workstation that you have, then you can run this program, RProDB, outside of Retail Pro. Okay, so I'm just going to show you that quickly because it's easy to pick it off the menu, but most of the time, the people have trouble remembering / finding the RProDB, and they have to because they need to run it outside. So I'm going to go to I'm going to follow my Retail Pro shortcut. I'm going to go to Properties, and I'm going to open the file location. Okay, and that opens me up in my Retail 8 folder. Okay, now RProDB you will find in the RPro directory. Okay, so I'm going to go down here to the RPro directory. I'm going to scroll down here to my programs and find my RProDB. So here's my executable RProDB. So as a little aside here, there are several things that are that you can call from inside the Retail Pro 8 menu. Polling is one. Reports is one. RProDB is one. There's a couple of others, but they are separate little executables that the menu actually calls, just for convenience sake. But they're also you're also able to run them outside the program. Okay, and we'll come back to this because we'll be doing starting up the polling from outside, so you can see how that works in case you really need or want to run it outside the menu. Okay, so if I run this program, it's going to bring up a little dialog box. Okay, now RProDB, right? You really want to run this when people are out of Retail Pro. Okay, I did not get out of Retail Pro here, right? But I'm at the main menu. Okay, so I don't have any files open, so it's not going to complain. If you tried to go into RProDB with somebody open, it's going to stop you. Okay, it's going to say people are in Retail Pro, get them out before you can do this. Okay, so RProDB does several things. First thing that it does is this is how we define whether this is your main location, okay, or a remote store. Okay, that's the first thing that's important. Okay, so your current location here, this is a main because it's just a single setup. But if you were on a remote, okay, and you had a problem with workstation locks and you ran RProDB at the remote, this would have current location. It would say 001A, whatever your station is. Okay, and there's a file that controls this on the main. This file is written here on a remote. There's a file, and that file is downloaded via polling. So you don't actually create this file yourself. You can't edit it. The only thing you can do is use RProDB to change it if you want to. A couple of things that might be interesting about what RProDB does. Okay, it controls how many inventories you have. So if you have more than one store, okay, all of the Retail Pro 8 comes with at least 2, a 000, and if you're a single store, you're going to have a 000 and you're going to have a store 1. Okay, if you have 10 stores, you got 10 inventories generally. Okay, this is the number of inventory rows you're currently defined for. Okay, so in my system, this is a really odd number, but I have 47,501 rows. Okay, if I've run out of rows, okay, this is how you change it. Okay, and going up is not a problem. Okay, going down is a very tricky thing, and you should really make sure, talk to tech or whatever, make sure you're doing it safely, because in 8, each item row corresponds to an item in inventory. And those items can be reused. Those item rows can be reused. You can use clean house, delete the descriptions out of the item row, and reuse the item number. Okay. But if you have, if you decided you wanted to go down to 40,000, let's say, and you had any information in the 7501 rows that you were cutting out, that information would be gone. Okay, so this is a tricky thing. Usually, expanding is not a problem, and you could do it on your own. If you're trying to contract this, then please review it with the tech so you don't get yourself in trouble. You do this just at the main, and when you do it at the main, that will automatically broadcast down to your remotes with polling. Okay, because if you're making a change to inventory, when you change this, it'll pull down. Price levels here. If you have more than one price level, you'll see the number that are available here. Okay. All right. So other things that are in here that we'll just touch on briefly. This is the length of field. So if you ever wanted to know if you could change the length of your description to shorten it, yes. To lengthen it, all you can do is go to 30. So anybody who came up from 7 to 8, these expanded from 6 to 7 to 8, and this is where they're controlled. And this is setting aside this info in the data file. So if you change this information, then you're going to be having to do a reconstruct in order to make sure that change is applied across the board. Okay. Same with changing the inventory indexes. So this controls what fields are actually indexed for your inventory, so that you and for those of you, let's see if I can get in here, merchandise and inventory, if it'll let me. Okay, so where the little dots are. So this makes this a sortable field if it's indexed. Okay, so the DCS is a sortable field. Let's see. Vendors not. The description one is a sortable field. So those are the indexes in this particular case. Okay, so we're using, looks like this custom sort. All right, so the other thing that's in here is the ability to have your receipts indexed by different things. This is the sales receipt list view. So with all of these things checked, those are all the fields that are available for you to sort through on the receipt and find receipts quickly. All right, so those are the pieces and the parts of the RProDB. Why do you care? Ultimately, probably not very often. Okay, so realistically, on an ongoing basis, unless you add an inventory or you need to add rows, you're not going to be in here unless you have a workstation lock that you can't seem to get rid of. Okay, because what this will do, because it needs to have access to everything in Retail Pro, if you go into it, it will see if there are workstation locks, and if there are, it will ask you if you want to remove them. Okay, and so generally, if you're in here, the answer is going to be yes. Okay, so you go into RProDB, let it remove the locks. You don't need to change anything. Just by the process of accessing it, it's going to check to see if they're locks, and it's going to ask you to remove them if they're locks anywhere. Right? Now, this looks a little scary. It always is going to prompt you for this, even though I haven't changed anything. It knows I went in and I touched stuff, so there's a potential there. So it just warns you. Okay, so unless you are, unless you've done something horrible in here and you don't want to execute it, you're always going to say okay. So here it's going to go read through all those things, re-index them if necessary, remove the lock files, close. Now, if the reason you did this was so that you remove lock files, you should go test the appropriate workstation and make sure that you can get in. Okay, so RProDB for beginners, right, is basically just used to remove lock files and or maybe increase the item rows. All right, and so when we were talking about RProDB, I mentioned the word reconstruct. If you're not familiar with that term, lucky you. What reconstruct is a tool that will automatically check all the indexes in Retail Pro for whatever files that you specify. It's a it is a tool that can run from the outside. It is also a tool that you can run from the inside. Okay, and again, reconstruct is something that everybody's got to be out of Retail Pro for it to be successful. You may not know the specific file that might be in need of reconstruct. What will happen in the most blatant case is you'll be sitting in POS receipts, okay, like this. Let me go back and see if I can find a month that's got some stuff in it. One thing here. So if I'm sitting in here and I lose power on this computer, that should break this index. Okay, and if the index is broken and I go to start Retail Pro, it may give me a message that says, such and such a file is broken, run reconstruct, and then you'll be, let's see, let me edit this. I'm going to see if I can break this file. This is sales report, April 10. Let me task manager this. I think that would probably be smarter to break it. Okay, so I'm going to task manager and end this to try to shortcut properties. This is not what I want. This one, end. End now. Lose data. Yes. Okay, so now if I open my Retail Pro again, because that was a history file, it may not spot that problem right away. Okay, but if I go here and try to pull it up, let me see if I can, April 14. Yeah, I didn't break it. All right, so let's say I did break it and I did know what file it was. Okay, you can use reconstruct here on the side menu, and strictly speaking, you should kick everybody else out of Retail Pro while you run this. Okay, what will happen? Okay, if you don't kick them all out, it'll go through all the reconstruct, and then at the end, it'll tell you it had fatal errors. If it's done that, and you have errors still, okay, then it has not done its job, and you need to kick everybody out of Retail Pro and go do it again. All right, so let's talk about this, what this actually does. So you can see you've got a file list on the left. Okay, you have a pull down up here under file categories. Okay, so roughly here are the categories where you'll find things. With all, of course, if I scroll down here, I'm going to see every DAT file, right? So the files that have the data in them are a .dat. Okay, they have have two corresponding index files, an IX and a, I forget what. Let's just look, RPro. So you can see these files here. There's a DAT file, there's an IX file, and there's a DIA file. Both of these are index files. And so the ones with the same file name belong together as a group. Most of the time, the DAT files are the biggest ones. But in the case where I don't have any data, these little rinky-dink ones, those are not the biggest ones. But the DAT files are what controls the data. So when you take a backup, the only thing that's really important to copy are the DAT files. You can always rebuild the indexes. Okay, so let's say that I knew that I had blown up April sales 2014. Okay, so that I know is a transaction file. It's not an inventory file. The inventory file is the invn.dat, the one that contains your actually inventory on hand and the items and all that. The transaction files are actually the ones that contain the transactions. So what did we ring up in April of 2014? And you can see these files fly by here. ME Those are memo files, adjustment memo files. You can see there's a year and month for each one of them, so that's why when you click over here on month on your transaction things, each one of those goes to a separate file. That's why you see those little icons. So ME files are the memo, adjustment memos, and then these are markdown files. So not important unless you've got some price manager pending markdowns. Very rarely do you have to reconstruct those. RC files are your vouchers, your receiving vouchers. Okay. SA files are your sales. Okay, so there's all your sales. TR files are transfers if you're multi-store. That's important. I'm going to pull it all the way down here. So these are transfers, TR. That would be 2015, the month of June. Or yeah, June, right. Okay, so the file that I was looking for is a sales file, 2014, April. So that would be this one. All right, now if I wanted to reconstruct just that file, I find that file, I use this top blue arrow to get it over here. Okay, so this is what we're actually going to be reconstructing, whatever's listed here. Okay, and I already have my system set for full reconstruct. There are some options here. You can test to see if this file's broken, okay, which could be handy if you're looking to see what file is broken, because you can test the data without kicking people out of Retail Pro. So you could test it. If that's the one that's broken, then you kick everybody out of Retail Pro, reconstruct it really quick, and you're off to the races. Okay, so if you're not sure what's broken, and you know it's a busy day or whatever, and you don't really want to kick people out to figure this out, then test can be helpful. Re-index only. Very, very rarely do we actually use this in real practice, because most of the time what this does is test the existing index. And it really doesn't take that much more time to do a full reconstruct. And so what that does, a full reconstruct, throws the old index away and rebuilds it from scratch. So re-indexing, you know, most of the time if you have a problem that requires reconstruct, doesn't really do much. Okay, so you know, we all just here just cut to the chase and always do a full reconstruct, but it does require that you kick everybody out. All right, so whatever the files are on this side, when I click the Start button, it's going to reconstruct them. Okay, and it will read all the data in this file. This one's going to take about 2 seconds, so don't blink. I see a hand up. Hang on a second. Let me see who that is. Christy, go ahead.
So how often do you recommend running reconstruct?
All right, so there's no right or wrong answer to that. Some people's installations, they have reconstruct set up in their scheduler, so it runs, you know, once a week, once a whatever, in the middle of the night. So if you have a lot of problems where you're having to do it on a regular basis, then you would set up that task in your scheduler to run like either before or after polling, and I've seen a lot of people that do that. Okay?
So like
some people, yeah, that should be adequate. So do you have multi-stores?
No, we just have the one, and I think we run it
just the one. Okay.
And then usually like right before you do an inventory as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So you know, over time the indexes can get, you know, a little off. Right, and so if you're doing something like a physical where you need everything to be perfect, you do a reconstruct and then you initialize if it's a single store, you don't initialize out to the remotes, but doing a reconstruct so you're absolutely dead sure that all your indexes are perfect.
Right. Okay.
Yep. Okay. And as long as we're talking about that, you don't need to reconstruct history for that. Okay, so you know, the transaction files are part of what you can reconstruct. If we were doing this for an inventory, then you'd really only need to reconstruct your main inventory files. Okay, so you know, this is one of them, invx.dat. This is one of them. That's the main one here, invn.dat. So for a physical, there's other things like multi-vendor that are like ancillary files to this. So a lot of people say, you know what, I can't remember what those are, so I'm going to do everything under the inventory list, right? So if you take, these are client, that's your customer list. So if you just do that little icon right there with the little pages behind it, that takes everything on this side, puts it over here.
Gotcha.
Okay, so instead of trying to remember which ones of these are important for a physical, you're going to be kicking everybody off anyway, right? And unless you have a huge client file, okay, which if you do, you really don't need to redo those. You can take these off if you just by doing that, just clicking them off over here, right? And then reconstruct the rest. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the button here, and we'll reconstruct this so you can see what it's doing while it's doing it. It shouldn't take too long. So there's some settings. I'm going to go ahead and mute you here. Raise your hand again if I mention something that you want to ask a question of. All right, hang on. Okay, so there's some automated settings that under advanced options that we usually set, and they just stay this way unless there's a good reason why not. So there is a log so that we know when you reconstructed something and what options were set at the time. It does make a backup. Okay, so there is a file called reconst in your RPRO directory that puts a copy of whatever you're going to reconstruct in there first before it does it. So if something gets totally screwed up, we've got that. Okay, and so reconstructing, you don't really have to be very careful about making sure that you have your regular backup before you do this, because it's going to back up whatever files you choose to reconstruct before you do this. So if something goes horribly wrong, it gets interrupted or whatever, we do have the files before you did the reconstruct. Okay, so let's just click the OK here and run it. So you can see here it'll give you a little progress monitor that tells you what file it's working on, how many records it's going through, blah, 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 blah. If you did not kick everybody out of Retail Pro, okay, you won't know until you get to the end, okay, and it's going to tell you fatal errors, all right? So make sure if you're doing this, okay, that you can go set everything up, but make sure everybody's out of Retail Pro before you hit the start button, or it'll go through however long it takes to do it, and it'll say finish with fatal errors, okay, and then you have to go back and do it again. Anyway, so that's the process. Okay, you can see that didn't take very long. My database is not very big. And so with reconstruct, okay, if somebody, you're dealing with something and it's just, I'm just going to reconstruct all. That's all your history. That's all everything. That's going to take a while for some of you that have been in business for 10 years or longer. Okay, so if you have a current problem, okay, that with your inventory, or let's look at what's in the miscellaneous file. So these are just a lot of little bits and pieces of things. So you can see none of these are very big, right? So if you want to say, I'm not sure what my problem is, but by the way, this is your employee file, and this is quite often a thing that gets broken in 8. So clerk.dat is your employee file. Anyway, you could say I want to do all my miscellaneous, okay, and then I want to go and make sure that I have all my inventory, right? And so if I do a full reconstruct on that, that's most of the actual day-to-day data files, okay, outside your transactions, right? So none of those RC or SA files, anything like that. Okay, orders, this is your POs and your SOs and your TOs. Okay, so if something's broken in there, you can just reconstruct your PO file. Mine's a little big, and leave the rest of it out of there. So you have some control, okay, and you should probably use it. Okay, and as far as doing this reconstruct, there's really not a lot that you could hurt by accident by doing this, as long as everybody's out of Retail Pro. Okay, so if you do this and there were some errors and it tried to fix them and you were in Retail Pro, worst case scenarios, you're just going to have to run it again. Okay. Okay, so Reconstruct, it's a basic tool. If sometimes you may know what the file name is because Retail Pro will tell you when you log in. Okay, and you can go find the file on the list. Usually that is the current sales file. People break their current sales files all the time. And so you make sure everybody's out of Retail Pro. You go find your current sales file, which would be SA 2015 11, right? You would move that over here, hit the Reconstruct button. If it says you have fatal errors, you go kick whoever's in Retail Pro out, and you go back and you do it again until you can do it cleanly. Then everybody could log in. Okay, so I'm going to exit here. That's enough about that. And let's see what's next on our list. Checking shortcuts. Okay, so we did talk in the beginning about having your main workstation / workstation 1, and then if you have more than one, those are all networked to your workstation or your workstation 1 or your server. Okay, and everybody accesses Retail Pro with a shortcut. Okay, and so you've got a shortcut out on your desktop like this. Okay, and you click on it, and that shortcut accesses a path. Okay, so if I go right-click on it and look at properties, it accesses a path in Retail Pro. Okay, now occasionally, and this is a problem in 8 that a lot of people have, if your power goes out on your workstation and you're logged into Retail Pro, it can do what we call blow up your shortcut, and that means that your shortcut basically disappears. Okay, so I'm going to can this, delete. Okay, so you come in, you log back into your computer, and your shortcut is nowhere to be found. Okay, it's gone, and you panic. And most of the time people will call here at the Big Hairy Dog and say my shortcut is gone. Okay, you, because you're educated now, have the ability to put that shortcut back. Okay, and the trick to doing that, okay, is you open up your My Computer icon so you can see your disk drives. Okay, now mine happens to be on D, but let's pretend that I have a network location here that's RPro. Okay, so and this is a secondary workstation, that's where most of these shortcuts get lost because they get blown up if it can't talk to Retail Pro over the network. So you would open up your network location, okay, and I'm going to fake that here. Okay, you open up your network location, you find your Retail 8 folder. Okay, and in your Retail 8 folder is going to be this executable, rpro 8.exe. Okay, and so to put that shortcut back on your desktop, all you do is use the regular Windows facility where I right-click on this, okay, and send to desktop. Okay, so you can see this one appeared down here, okay, down in the corner, right, and then I can put it anywhere I want. I have this, nice pretty thing that corrals my all my shortcuts. You can see I'm not real good about keeping my desktop clean, and so that recreates your shortcut, and now you can get back in. Now, for those of you who are on Windows XP, okay, this should work, okay, because your workstation number is machine specific. Okay, so that computer knows it's workstation 1, and it will automatically allow you to use that workstation, whatever it was predefined for. So all you really need is to put your shortcut back. Okay, now what happens sometimes is you run your shortcut and it can't open Retail Pro. Okay, and if that happens, okay, what's happened is somehow your network location has become disconnected. Okay, so there will be, and let me disconnect one just so, not that one. I want to disconnect one that's a little less important. Okay, so let's refresh. 5. Oh, no, I'm not going to get that back, and that's not going to be good. Okay, so let's map you. All right, can't fake this. So what will happen is you'll have a network location here, and it'll say RPro main, and there'll be a red X. Okay, that means that for some reason I lost my network connection temporarily. So if you can, double-click on this where the red X is, okay, and you can see files, okay, then you should be able to use your shortcut. So that's another quick way of getting your secondary workstations back online, is open up your My Computer icon, check in your network location to see if there's a red X. If there's a red X, click on it. If the window opens up, then you should be able to go back to your Retail Pro icon and run Retail Pro. All right, so that's you know, a little bit about dealing with losing your shortcut, which is something that you know, we get calls for all the time. You know, rebooting is not going to put your shortcut back. Rebooting might put your network connection back, but it's easier just to go to My Computer and check and see if it's up. If it's not up, click on it. If it still doesn't come up, then you need to figure out why you can't see Retail Pro over the network. So you got a cable unplugged, you got something like that. Okay. So everybody knows that backups are important, right? So hopefully all of you have a program that takes your Retail Pro data and backs it up onto some kind of either a flash drive, an external CD, maybe the cloud. Okay, so there should be some program that takes the Retail Pro DAT files at a minimum. Some of them will take your whole Retail 8 folder in some cases, you know, depending on what backup you're using and how much room you have. What is critical, okay, is the DAT files in the Retail Pro 8 folder. So all of these that are DAT like this. Now, your history files don't change every day. So if you're on limited space, you don't necessarily need to copy those every day. But for some, you know, hard drive space is cheap these days, so most people they back up probably their whole Retail 8 folder. There are some files in there that you know, if you've been in business for a while, they get extra big. One of them is what we call the Secure Doc folder, which is a kind of like an audit, you know, type thing. So my Secure Doc folder is probably not very big. Yeah, not very big. But you know, yours may get massive. You don't have to back that up every night. But you do need to know for sure that your backup is running. Check your backups. Make sure that is functional. So if you don't know if you're backing up right now or don't know where to check, then I would encourage you to do that. You'd be surprised how many people we ask, so did you know if your system backed up last night? They go, and you know, I wouldn't be sleeping at night very well if that was the answer to my question, okay? Because if you have a problem, like you get a virus, or if your hard drive goes south for the winter, if you don't have a backup, you don't have a backup, okay? And that backup needs to be somewhere else besides this hard drive. It needs to be in the cloud. It needs to be on removable media that you swap out, like an external hard drive or a flash drive or a CD, where you know, keep it away off this computer and additionally off-site. Okay, so whatever it is, just make sure that you're looking to make sure that's current and monitoring it. Some people do backup every night. Okay, and if you're one of those, great. Just make sure that that's happening, that it doesn't sit down in the middle of the road, or your external hard drive fills up, or anything like that. Okay, that's the easiest tech call is when somebody has a hard drive failure, and we say, "Where's your backup?" They say, "Just a minute, I'll call it up." Okay, and then basically we drop another hard drive in, we get Retail Pro on it, we drop their backup in, and they're done. Okay, if you don't have a backup, that process can be really painful. Okay, so some of this other stuff that we talk about with hardware, this may seem like a no-brainer, but we mention it anyway. So you come in and your terminal's dark, right? Your screen is dark, right? So what are the basics? Is the power on to my screen? Yes. Check the screen first, okay, because the screen may have gone off and your computer might be still on. Okay, so check the screen first. Make sure it's got power. Make sure you can turn it off and on. If all those things happen and you still don't see your Windows desktop, then you're checking your computer. Is my computer have power? Did it go off in the middle of the night and not come back on? Same things with printers and all that kind of stuff. Tech Support 101 is my so-and-so doesn't work. Is it plugged in? Is the first question that we ask, literally the first question that we ask. So you can ask those questions yourself. Is it plugged in? Is it on? Okay, and then go from there. Printers are basically same type of function. You guys have tag printers. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about dumping a printer. So tag printers have a format loaded in them, and sometimes those formats get jumbled or stuck, or loaded incorrectly by the program or whatever. So there's a process, and this is highly dependent on the printer that you have, but there's usually a reset or a dump process that you can go through to make sure that anything in the printer memory is cleared. And I'm talking specifically tag printers in this case. So if you have the old Zebras, basically you power the printer off, you hold the feed button down while you're powering it on, it blinks, and depending on the type of printer, blinks once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, lifts finger up, that prints a little thing that says it's in dump mode, and then you can send a tag to it, turn it off and on, and you're ready to go. So that varies with the printer. So if you want some specifics about your printer, we can get that to you, but it's really not really worth going through much more than that without knowing what specific printer you're dealing with. Another thing that is under hardware but not really hardware is this is workstation preferences. The reason it's under hardware is that in your workstation preferences are the defaults for the peripherals that are attached to this workstation. All right, so that can include cache drawer, it can include a line display, it can include numerous things, physical devices, right? It can include pin pads, okay? And for those of you who have the new Genius pin pad, this doesn't have any there's no configuration that's actually in this physical workstation preference because it's not physically attached. It's a separate Ethernet port that's reached by an IP address. But anyway, if you've ever looked in here, shopper display would be a customer-facing line display. Cache drawer, that's pretty obvious, connected to a port on your system. This is a scanner if you're using a scanner like for inventory. So the old PTs or a Palm version or anything like that. So these are defined workstation by workstation. Okay, and if something is working and ceases to function, okay, on a specific workstation. It may be because one of these things got accidentally blown up. That's possible. The cache drawer, for instance, some of you will have them where they're connected physically to a serial port, and something happened where one serial port went bad, and you need to move it to the other. Here is where you do that. Okay, and in general, this is just for a beginner. This may be, I just need to see where it's plugged in, because maybe I had to take the thing apart, or the workstation apart, and put it back together, and now my cache drawer is not working. So I need to know what port my cache drawer was running on. Okay, look in here, and most modern computers only have one COM port. We, as Big Hairy Dog, always put an additional one on it if it's going to be a POS workstation, so we have the option. And new cache drawers are USB, and those are going to be using an OPOS driver, okay, which is really outside of what we're going to talk about today. But at least you can see how it's supposedly connected if you have to move things around. The other thing that you might use this for is changing your workstation defaults. Okay, so we get a lot of calls on my receipts only printing one copy and I need two, or when I do a credit card receipt, right? It doesn't come out automatically. Those kind of things. Those kind of things are in workstation preferences. Okay, and so just as a quick overview of what's in here, any place in Retail Pro outside of actual reports, the defaults are controlled in workstation preferences. So it's workstation by workstation by workstation. Okay, so these might be different on every workstation. What the system sees, okay, is any Windows printers that you have configured on your system. So you can see those, that big list there is all the computer or the printers I have configured. Okay, and then there's a list here, okay, of all the possible documents that you can set as a default, right? So you've got PO, things that are obvious, transaction documents, vouchers, etc. Tags is all the way down at the bottom. Right, so there's inventory tags. So since we're just talking about that, I'm going to pick on that one because it's a simple one. Okay, so if something's happening and your tags aren't printing, or you've got too many prompts or whatever, that's going to be in workstation preferences. All right, so if I highlight that, right now I don't have any printers set as the active or default printer for my tags. So I do have a couple of instances of printers that are tag printer. This is a Zebra tag printer. So if I click here, okay, now the inventory tags is going to use this as my default printer. Okay. Now, if I have more than one printer, then I need a choice. Then that's when I check this box down here where it says Allow Change at time of printing. So if I check that, that means I'll get the ability to, on the fly, select different printer. It's going to default to this one, but I'll have the choice of selecting another one at time of printing. So the other thing that you do in here is select the design. Okay, so these are dock designs, and almost everybody, if they're printing tags from this workstation, is going to have it, have it default to one. Okay, so let's just say it's going to be that one. So when I run ask the system to print tags, it's going to default to this printer. It's going to default to this design. Now, if I want a choice of design, let's say I have more than one design, I can check this box. Now I'll get a choice of design. Okay, so the other things that on this row here, preview, right, allows or will automatically bring up a preview before it gets to the print dialog. So, with tag printing, if you're testing tags and tinkering with the tag design, this might be important. for the most part, with tags, you wouldn't want to check this. But this is a preview that is set to come up automatically before you get a choice to print the tags. Paper size, you can default a paper size in tags. This is usually defined by the printer. Okay. In some of these other ones here, if I were to click like this guy, right, this is going to be defined by the printer. So it reads the printer driver and says, here's your choices. Okay. If you leave it defaulted, then the doc design is going to choose the right thing. The printer is going to default to something. You don't have to have a paper size in there unless it's something that you want to limit this particular device to. All right, so if we do this, we can leave that as blank. And if we save this, now when I ask to print a tag, it's going to default to this. It's going to give me a choice of printer. It's going to give me a choice of design, but it's going to default to this. Okay, so because this is a very simple scenario, I'm going to show you what that looks like. So if I go to merchandise or any place where I can print tags, right, here's my print tag button. Okay, now because I gave myself a choice of design, I see all the possible tag choices that I have in my system, which is a bunch, way more than any of you would want to do. But you can see it's defaulting to this one. So if I'm taking the default, I can just click OK. Okay, then I get this because I gave myself a choice of printer. I could potentially change this. Okay, if you don't have a choice of printer, you still see this box, but you can't change it. Okay, and here basically number of copies, all listed records, etc. That's a standard thing. And because I don't have preview on the bottom, I don't have the choice of this. All I can do is print. All right, so basically that's how you control the defaults for that. It's more than just tags. It can be your receipt printer. It can be your laser printer or whatever, DeskJet, whatever you have that that prints your POs. But if somebody says I'm printing receipts and I'm automatically getting 2 copies, or I'm printing receipts and it's going to the wrong printer, then that is in your workstation preferences. And one more thing I want to point out while we're at it is this box right here that says Override Individual Document Settings. Okay, so in receipts in particular, you've got individual settings for these types of receipts. If you want them all to be the same, okay, then you click that box. So that means whatever you have set on the group of receipts applies to all receipts no matter what. Okay, so I can set this one. Here's my my receipt printer. I can set that one to active. I can say here's my default design. That would be good. And I don't need a choice of printer. It's always going to go to the same printer. I don't need a choice of design. Just make it happen. That's it. No receipts or no previews, no whatever. So if I go to print a receipt, whether I'm doing an initial sale or reprinting a former receipt, that's a bad month. I don't have any stuff, but I had something in April. So if I go print, right, it's gonna send it to the printer. That's it. Okay, I don't get to ask any questions. I don't actually have a printer hooked up here, so it's probably going to be mad at me. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, so that went out to my Vixalon, which is a Phantom Vixalon, but Retail Pro's happy because it had a place to send it. Okay, so let's go back to my agenda here. All right, so that's just some real basics on hardware. Now we get to the fun stuff. So any of you who've ever heard the initials DVS, that's a tool in Retail Pro, and 100% in this tool you got to be out of Retail Pro to deal with it. Okay, and there's all kinds of things in DVS which we're not going to cover today, but what we do in this webinar is give you an overview of what's in there and what it's used for, so that if you know you have a problem that you aren't able to resolve, that you know that you might be able to fix it in DVS, and then you might need to book an appointment so that we can walk you through learning that specific function. But there are some things in DVS that can really screw up your data. So unless you've had a little training, or unless you've had a tech walk you through something specific in there and you're confident that you're doing what needs to happen, then DVS is something that you can do on your own. But you really will want to start small and really make sure that you have the info at hand to do it properly. Now, there is a piece of documentation. That's not the one. Hang on. This one. Yeah, this one. Okay, there's a piece of documentation that comes on your Retail Pro 8 system. Okay, there's a PDF that explains DVS. Okay, and it is worth reading because it is pretty clear. It will always tell you this is really dangerous, so don't do this unless you know what you're doing, type of thing. But it does explain in depth. Now, this document, I'm going to go back up to the top so you can see that the top of it is a PDF that you can find on your Retail Pro system. Let me back up to where I can show you where it is. Okay, so in this window here, I'm in the Retail 8 folder. Let me just back up really to the beginning here. So in your Retail Pro 8 folder, there's a file called eManuals. Okay, and that's where I found this PDF and docs. Right? So this has got a lot of stuff in it, okay, and sometimes trying to find what you're looking for in here can be a little challenging, okay? So unless you know exactly where it is or you have a shortcut, there's an alternative, right? So all of you probably have this eManuals button on your menu. So if I click the eManuals button, it should load a little window that allows me to get to the supplemental documentation. Okay, and if you click there, let's go, click here. System's being a little slow. Hang on a second. Okay, so come on, link me. There we go. Right. Okay, so this will actually give you a menu that you can click on and find the tool that you're looking for. So the Retail Pro 8 Users Guide is all the basics, how to bring a sale, about vouchers, things like that. Supplemental documentation is a little deeper, okay, and if you're even thinking about DVS or talking about, RProDB, Reconstruct, anything like that, the documentation does exist in here. So off-the-shelf tools, where's my DVS? There we go. Data Verification System, DVS. Right, so if you click on that, that's going to bring you to this PDF, okay, which you can read all about everything there is to know about DVS, okay, and it would still be something that you would want to check with the tech on if you're not completely sure of what you actually need to do. In this webinar, what we do is just show you how to get to DVS, just kind of explain it from a higher level and what beginners might usually use DVS for, understanding that this is a tool that absolutely 100% will not let you in if you're in Retail Pro at all for anybody. So everything in DVS has to be done with everybody out. Okay, so most people have it under Tools and the More menu, and this one where it says data verification, there's more to that shortcut, but it's Data Verification System, DVS. Okay, so this brings up a little window. Again, this is one of those programs that's actually a separate executable, so that means we can run it from outside, okay, as long as everybody's out of Retail Pro. And most of, when we talk about it in this webinar, verification, that's pretty much it. You're not going to get in too much trouble using the verification, because basically what it does is go through and read the files and see if there's anything really easy and automatic that it can fix. Duplicate item SIDs is one of the things, and that's what we talk about mainly in this. You can't hurt anything if you go in and do a sequence check, okay, on these, right? And check to make sure that everything is in order, okay? Revision is another place where, for the most part, the beginner DVSers will be able to do things and not get hurt. Once you get to maintenance and advanced, now you're in the point where you really need to make sure you know what you're doing. Okay, what we talk about is item and style SID check. Okay, is what we talk about in this webinar, and what this does, okay, is go through and make sure that all the items have a unique SID. If there's two items with the same SID, then it's going to assume that those things belong together, and they probably do. They're 99% of the time that you let the system fix this. If it's broken beyond the point where this thing can fix it, then there's another tool in DVS that will help you do it. But you're not going to get you're not going to hurt anything by doing an item SID check. Okay, and basically what it's going to do is it's going to read history, and you can have it go through all your history, or you can just do a date range. You can have it include your sales orders. One important thing about SID checking and DVSing, if you use jackpot rows, okay, you want them to, you want the SID check to not include the jackpot rows. So if you have rows 1 through 50 set aside for jackpot rows, you want to exclude those. And so this item filter gives you the choice to do that. And so if you have 1 through 50, and then you have 10,000 through 10,005, you can do sequences or ranges, but you want to make sure that you've added these here whenever you do a SID check or when you're doing DVS for your history or anything like that. So basically, anything here that's got the same description 1 and the same DCS and vendor, okay, the item SID should be the same, okay? And if it's not, this thing's going to make it the same. And there's not really any danger in doing this. It does this automatically. You can see it, if it finds anything, it's going to display it here. I did this earlier today, so I know I don't have anything. So it's just going to do its thing and come back and tell me when it's done. Okay. Transfers, adjustments. So it's reading through all the history, looking for anything where the DCS, the vendor, and the description 1 match what's in inventory, and they have a different item SID. Okay. If it doesn't find anything, great. If it does, it's going to tell you, I found these. Do you want me to fix them? You're not going to hurt anything by saying yes. Okay, so another thing that's in here, which some of you may already have used, and this really isn't tech support, but you can read the system and flag customers and mark them and use that for mailing lists or filtering. Okay, so if any of you are familiar with that, that may be something you've been in DVS for, but we really don't cover that here. It's really not a tech thing. It's more of a training, everyday use thing. So the other thing here is looking at duplicate customers and that kind of thing. So if you are, let's see, I'm not going to analyze all here because I'm going to be here forever. So let's just say analyze 1 year. Okay, so using this allows you to find customers that might be duplicated, okay, and fix them. And this is something else that is a beginner DBS thing that we can show you how to do. Again, this is something you have to be completely out of Retail Pro in order to do this. So a lot of people will work on this for like a half an hour before everybody comes in and merge a bunch of customers, and then go at it again when they have some time. Do it in small chunks. This database doesn't have anything that's really broken. So let's see, just check, make sure. Yeah, I don't have anything that's really broken. So this is hard for me to actually demonstrate here. But if you need help in this specific area, your PDF does explain this in a great deal of detail. Let's see if I can pull that page up. We are in Maintenance Advanced Revision, Customer, page 115. Okay, so here, right, says you can locate and merge duplicate customers and synchronize, the addresses, so forth and so on. So this is one of the areas where I've successfully pointed people at the documentation, and they've actually been able to follow it and get get things done, right? So that is a tool that you could attempt on your own, okay? And again, this is something that once you use the revision tool, those, the effects of this are rewriting your DAT file. All right, so that is something that when you're first learning, you want to make sure that you have a backup before you do this, because if you do something and you don't have the intended result, your backup is your only defense against this. So if you pick 2 customers to merge and those were the wrong ones, they're merged. And it would be hard to unmerge them. All right, so for the rest of the time here, we talk about polling issues because that's one of the things that main areas where version 8 people have tech calls. Okay, so from the polling standpoint, if you have, and so anybody here, if you're just a single store, we are pretty much done with things that have to do with single store, and everything else that we're going to cover is a multi-store type of thing. So if your eyes are closing and you need to go do something else, that would be okay. Somebody's raising their hand. Let's see. Yes, Christy?
Yeah, we're a single store, so I think we're going to sign off. But do you have the? Are you going to have this recorded for future watching?
It is recorded, and you'll get an email link because you signed up with your email, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll get an email link mailed back to you within the next few days.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right. Time.
Thanks for your attention. So the other people that I have on here, we'll go through polling. I know Nell, you're multi. Sharon, I'm not sure about you, but hopefully we'll get some real basics. If you've been a sysop for a while, some of this might be old news, but hopefully we'll learn something. So the basic overview of polling is the main, right, is the receiving end of the polling communication. The remotes, which is your store systems or your info stations or what have you, actually control the communication timing. Okay, so in a polling situation, the main has a program called Exchange that has to be up in order for the polling to take place. Okay, so we're going to go into the polling over here on the side. So any of you who are familiar with this should look similar to this. Okay, so when you set up your polling, right, you set up a line for each remote that you're going to be communicating with. Okay, so I have 2 here. There's no magic to the name here. You can call it anything you want. You can have a store name or whatever. The station is what's important here, right? So station 0002A or 001A, that's got to match how the station is defined in your RProDB on your remote. Okay, so that's what's important about this. I'm going to click the form view and just give you a little bit of tour about what's in here. That's a bad one. Let's go back to this. Yeah, okay. This will be good. All right, so name, this is, doesn't have to match the actual station. You can call it, the store name, put anything in here you want. The login doesn't necessarily have to be the station name. We use this as a convention, but if you're remote, that you set up a station on on this side, on your master, you set up a station on the remote, and this login and this password have to match. That's the handshaking. If they don't match, no polling. Okay, and here, yours are all going to say internet like this, and on the remote side, you'll have the IP address. That's the public IP address of your main. All right. So the stations, if you're not, if you've got a mature system and everything's set up, your stations are going to be set up. We really don't get involved in going through the ins and outs exactly of setting up the station. What we try to cover is, well, what happens if it's not working? Okay, that's the topic that we do. So you have a station on the main, you have a station on the remote. Okay, the login / passwords match so that they know who they're talking to when they connect in. Okay, and this computer, which is we're assuming for this discussion is the main. Okay, is the receiving end. Right? And in order for the receiving end to be up, then this program called Exchange needs to be running on the main. So if I click this, okay, and set this up, so way down here at the bottom, yeah, stop. Yeah. Cancel. All right, hang on. I got a bit of a problem here. So polling, I need to change this one so it's no longer disk. Internet. Come on, internet, save. Actually, I'll just disable this. That should be okay. All right, so now let me start this up. Okay, so now down here in the bottom here, you see this little Exchange Lightning Bolt. Okay, on your main computer, and this does not have to run on your actual server, but it has to be running at your main somewhere. Somewhere on your main, there has to be a computer that's the receiving end for this for polling. Okay, and your router or your firewall is going to monitor port 20,000 on the public IP, and if it sees a request, it's going to forward it to whatever computer is running Exchange. And if Exchange is not running, you won't communicate. Okay, so your scheduler probably has a task that starts this. You may be running it 24/7. You may not. With polling on 8, you don't generally poll during the day. You poll after hours because the files can exchange fine during the day, but you can't process in or process out. Okay, while while you're in Retail Pro. You can't do that successfully. For that reason, that's why polling takes place at night. Okay, so you may have a scheduler that starts the little lightning bolt, okay, and your computer sits up for whatever time frame you have polling taking place and waits for polling requests to come in. If you need to poll during the day because something was missed, okay, the first thing that you need to know is my Exchange already running on my main? If it's not, you can manually start it like I'm trying to do here, but I've got some things in conflict. But with this, if this little lightning bolt is running on whatever computer is your polling computer, and you need to know that, okay, then you can successfully ask the remote to do what we call a quick poll. So I'm going to cancel all that stuff. And so you do not quick poll on the main. You quick poll on remotes only. Okay, and since this is a main, this doesn't actually light up the quick poll thing here. But on a remote, this button is configured so usually it will do what we process in, which says, which means gather up any info that came in my last polling session that I haven't processed in, then try to then process out, so get anything ready that needs to go up to the other side, and then exchange. Okay, and then in some people's quick polls, they can set up a process in and a process out after the exchange as well. So the general sequence for polling is the main will be set on a schedule to process out at a certain time. Let's say it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay, process out, that means get all my files ready to go out to the remote, and then the remotes will be set on a timer. So let's say 1:30, remote number 1 polls, and remote number 1 would process out any information that it has at the end of the day. It would start exchange on its side, and if your lightning bolt is running on your main, the exchange will take place. Okay, and then remote number 2, let's say it goes at 2:30 or whatever, and you can have remotes going at the same time. You have up to 10 ports that can be exchanging simultaneously on the main. But if you have them going at the same time, you slow down the overall process. Sometimes, if you have 10 or 12 stores or whatever, you would stagger it. If you only have 2, it's probably not that big a deal to have them going at the same time frame on the remote. Okay, so the general process is on the main. Process out takes place to get the files ready. So any inventory changes, any documents that need to go down to the remote. On the remote, you would the normal process would be wake up at 1:30 in the morning, process out, so get any sales ready that need to go that haven't been up, do the exchange. Okay, the exchange is bi-directional once it's established, so anything that's waiting to go up to the main will go up. Anything that's waiting to go down to the remote will go down. So exchange both sides. So now on both sides, the files have been transmitted. Okay, and then there is usually a time mechanism on the main that says, okay, my polling session should have taken place between 1 and 2 in the morning, so I should have everything. So I'm going to process in, let's say, at 3 in the morning. Okay, and that's in a schedule. So the process in takes place, okay, at 3 in the morning, and then usually we will process out again. So if there are new customers or customer changes that came up from the remotes, or you're going to have inventory changes, right? So when we get all the documents up from the remotes, we process that into the main. That changes inventory. We're going to want to send that file down to the remote so that they have the updated history from the night's business. Okay, so we would at 3 o'clock in the morning, we're going to process in, and then turn around and process right back out. Okay, and then on the remotes, there will be a second exchange, and let's say it's 4 in the morning. Okay, so another exchange would happen, and another process in would happen at the remotes. So this is all timed and set up in a scheduler, and so yours is probably running just fine unless you have large chunks of data that aren't being able to process in the time frame, and then things might jam up, and that's one of the things that does happen. But if you understand what the relationship is between the remotes and the main and the timing, you can tweak the timing, and that's done in the scheduler. And let me just open the scheduler really quick here, and that is something that we do talk about in this properties. Okay, so file, open, main. Okay, so this is a little minimum scheduler here. Scheduler is something that we also talk about in this webinar. This little icon down here with the clock, okay, that's the Retail Pro scheduler. You can run the scheduler on any Retail Pro computer. So generally, and you can have more than one scheduler running on different workstations. So in general, the computer that's controlling the polling will have a scheduler on it, so that this exchange process is automatically started. So this one is automatically started every day, okay? And then you can set it to automatically close at a specific time, run indefinitely, or whatever. This one happens to run all the time. So every night at 11, this thing wakes up, and if Exchange isn't already running, it's going to start it. Okay, and so this is the process in and outs that I talked about. This process in happens to be set at 12 o'clock. So process in anything that's been sitting there. Process out at 3 o'clock in the morning. So this one is a little backwards because I would have the process out running before the exchanges. So the remotes here would be processing between 12 and 3. All right, so the polling sequence is controlled by a scheduler. Exchange has to be running on the main at the time you do the polling. Okay. In general, we tell everybody you got to be out of Retail Pro to poll, because unless the process in has permission to write the file, then it's just it's going to fail, right? And it won't actually be able to process in. The workstation will be locked. All right. So because of that, there's an additional little thing that you might need to know. There's a feature called polling lockout. And where did I put it here? I'm in the wrong place here. Might be in System Preferences. Yeah, I forgot to look for it. Let's go cancel here. See if I can come up with that, because there is a feature that you can set called polling lockout. So if they forget to log out, it locks Retail Pro for a time frame. And there it is, right there. Yeah. So this right here, schedule a lockout period. If you have people that just can't seem to remember to log out of Retail Pro, you can set this time frame. So let's say we poll between 12 and 6, right? So if we set that, then even if they forget to log out of Retail Pro, the system will be able to proc in. So unless you are a casino gift shop or something where you're open during that time frame sometimes, then this might work for you. All right. Anyway, that's just a little bit of how the polling is set up. And as far as troubleshooting or anything goes, this display right here where it shows send, receive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This shows you the state of affairs, right? So I have 29 files that are ready to send down to this workstation. I have 5 files that are ready to send down to that other workstation. Okay. If I have something in receive, that means that something has been sent up, but it hasn't been processed in, and errors and things like that, kind of self-explanatory. But what you can do is if you right-click on the blue here and go to polling status, you get something that is a little more helpful. It's a little easier to read, and the addition is you can go drill down to this folder, okay, and look and see what's sitting there and how old it is. So obviously, this is really old stuff. It's probably don't care anymore about it, and you could get rid of it. So that's an easy way to drill down into the actual file folder where these files exist. So when you do a process out, your files get built and they get deposited in this directory. Okay. Once they are sent down to the other location, they get stuck in this directory, the sent folder. If there is some kind of interruption in the polling and some files got partially sent, they'll end up in resume. If there's something wrong with it, these are called mail bags. If this is a compressed file, if something wrong with it, it might end up in this file. Okay, so we don't get really deep into what to do with moving all this stuff around. We do get deep enough so that you can go see if there's files in there. Okay, and so the file names here are all, they have a meaning. So ours, I believe, are received vouchers. Can't remember what D is, but there is a PDF in the directory where the DVS stuff is that explains what all these are and what the general polling is, if you're interested. So let me go back to my folder, not that folder, this folder. All right, so if I'm back in this folder, and here are pro e-manuals and docs, and there's one on here in polling. So there's polling monitor, that's a little different, but polling overview, right? So what we're covering here, is also available here in this document. It's 76 pages. But if you're really curious about digging into it, this explains everything there is to know about the way V8 polls. Okay, so we don't attempt to give you everything, just the highlights and enough information in case you need to pursue it, and typically what the problems are. The number one problem is Exchange is not running on your main. That's it. And if there's a number two problem, it's for some reason the ports have changed on your for your internet connection, and so what used to work doesn't work anymore, and then we get on your router, et cetera, et cetera. So number one problem, Exchange is not running at the main. Make sure Exchange is running at the main on the right computer, the computer that you're pointed at, and everything should be just hunky-dory. So one more thing that we talk about in this webinar, okay, has to do with regenerating and initializing. So this is something that's reasonably common in version 8 because things get out of sync for whatever reason. Another thing that and Christy touched on it a little bit earlier, if you're doing a physical inventory, we always recommend that you initialize out your current inventory on hand to the remotes before you do a count at the remotes, just to make absolutely 100% sure that your inventory on hand at the main, which is controlling your inventory on hand, is the same so what's on the remote is the same as what's at the main, so that when you count and we compare it, that it's matching. Okay, so the difference between initialize and regenerate is this. Initializing has to do with sending a file, okay, that's not a transaction file. So if you look at these groups here, this is, your inventory on hand, right? One that a lot of you get involved in is maybe sending your, you made a change to your user groups or your inventory or your employee list, and you need to pull that down, right? So those are things that are initializing. So what it's doing is it's sending the whole file. It's not sending just the differences. It's sending the whole file from the main down to the store. Okay, so like customers, right? That would be a that would be a pretty big file in a lot of cases. But initializing these, if you check these and say OK, and tell it what workstations you want to initialize for, because you have a choice. You don't have to do all. You can do one at a time. In some cases, this might create a big chunk of files for polling. So if your polling windows are really tight, you want to be careful about doing this. It will eventually feed through and keep up, but we've had instances of people on V8 that have a lot of stores. If they make a big price change, or they want to initialize customers or whatever, sometimes it takes a couple of days for all the stores to get the actual update. It'll just keep going through as much as it can every time, because part of the process is to create a confirmation that is sent back to the main to say, hey, I got this, don't need to send it again. And then until you get through a whole file and get that confirmation file built and sent back up, your main's going to keep trying to send that every time. All right, so initialize, send the whole file. So send my inventory file, so all my inventory descriptions, what everybody has on hand, to the other store. Initializing inventory is generally what happens when you, right before you do a physical. You're going to do that a couple of days ahead of time so that it has time to poll and make sure that what's on the master or what's on the main is the same as what's on the remotes. Now, regenerate is different. These are documents. Okay, so what you're doing here is saying, take all my, let's say, sales receipts. This is typically what most people regenerate, because for some reason or another, let's say you're missing sales for January 2014, whatever. You can tell the main, go find receipts for January of 2014. Okay, and to January of 2014. Okay, so you can tell the main here, go regenerate these receipts and send it to whatever station. Okay, now this is, most of the time this is used if we have to rebuild a remote and we want to make sure that we have some history down there. And the second most used reason for this is, for some reason, the sales at the remote don't match the sales on the master. Okay, now the sales were made at the remote, so you would regenerate at the remote and send them up to the main, so that you're sure that everything that's on the remote is up at the main. Okay, so this is documents, regenerate, initialize is sending a whole file. All right, so that's the basics about making sure that your what's on your master matches what's on your remote, depending on who's right. All right, so I think that's mostly what we cover here. I didn't show you the log. All right, so one other thing about polling is there is a log file of what goes on. So typically, if you have a polling problem, okay, the first thing you do after you make sure that Exchange was actually running is you go to the log in your polling program. Say no. And you'll see these pretty red X's, right? Any place there's a red X, that means there was a problem. If you don't see any red X's, then the problem is usually that you didn't get any files at all, that your network is not functional. The main wasn't running. So I'm going to open up. Let's see if I can find something that's actually live here, but not really. All right, so these X's, right? If I open this up and drill down, you can see I've had these files sitting here for forever, and when I try to move them from disk D to wherever it goes, that path doesn't exist. So that's why I get these red X's. So typically, with a system that's live on internet polling, one of these errors is going to be there's something wrong with a specific file, and it'll tell you what the file name is. The other thing that happens too is if you have multiple workstations, and let's say you've moved your workstation numbers around, if you're exceeding your allowable workstation license, things won't process in, and it'll tell you on the thing. So that's another thing that the log can tell you. It'll say, workstation not licensed or something like that, and then you have to go figure out what you moved and tell Retail Pro where you moved it to, and then come back and process in. So this is a good start because if you are, if things didn't show up in polling, you can go here first and see if there's any indication why. Okay, and if you look at these things, these were the errors that I was getting when I was trying to open Exchange when it wasn't defined properly. And so this tells me why I have a problem, and then I can hopefully go fix it. Socket error means that I'm not connecting to anything, okay, and that would be a network/internet type of a problem. All right, so this polling log can get kind of long. You can filter it. In general, people who use this, you're going to see the most current stuff. So unless that takes a really long time to load and you want to purge it, there's really no reason to worry about dealing with maintaining this. So last items first up here. I don't know of anybody who ever prints this. Usually they look at it, find the red X's, figure out what the red X is telling them, and go deal with it accordingly. All right. That's basically, we're at end of time. We are, pretty much finished with what we talk about on this. And as Christy said when she left, this has been recorded, and it'll be posted out on our website. It's an MP4, I believe, format, and we will email y'all with you're welcome now. Email you all with the link if you signed in, so you can always get back to it easily. If you lose the link or whatever, you can always get to our webinars by logging into the Big Hairy Dog. The Big Hairy Dog. Oh, the computer is just a dog today. Hang on. A new tab. Come on. Come on, Google. All right, let's do this way. Big, can't even spell. Big. All right, tech portal training, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. Okay, so on our tech portal, under training, you'll see this BHD recorded webinars. Now, these are ones that are pre-recorded. So all you have to do is get to this portal, click on the one you want to watch, and you can watch it. You didn't have to be an original applicant or original viewer of this in order to do it. These are up here. We record them so that even if you were unable to attend the webinar, you can always go back and look at it as many times as you want. So within a couple days, this webinar will be up on this. We invite you to review it if you need to, and we want to thank you for paying attention today and signing up and using the webinar. So let us know if you have any further questions that we weren't able to answer. We can always get you on the phone with a tech or trainer pretty easily. All right. So again, thanks for your attention. Okay, and hope to see you real soon in another BHD webinar. Thanks.